So, and like, I'm going to just reiterate this again, that this is not a political statement that you're making. These are statements coming from moms and parents who want to make sure our kids get a good education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So please go ahead.
Sure. So I think, we've learned a lot from the pandemic, all of us, figuring out how to survive this, how to keep our kids sort of happy and healthy. But I think, like, if there's anything we've learned having to deal with this incredibly challenging pandemic, it's that online learning is not a substitute for in-person instruction. And although I teach at the university level, I still think it's important for us at the university level, but it's so important, especially for our younger kids, especially for kids from families where there's active trauma. Coming to school, being at school, and being in a safe place is such a refuge for so many kids.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our kids learn more than academics, right? They learn tons of stuff at school, social interaction, collaborating with each other. And we know that in our public schools, educators do a whole lot more than just lecture.
Mm-hmm.
They provide all sorts of support, just hugs, hellos, welcome to the classroom, so many things that our educators provide for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've always known that there have been disparities in Arizona in particular, but we've seen this even more so, that resources, especially the digital divide, they're calling it, that low income schools had a great deal of difficulty transitioning to online learning because they often didn't have technology for their kids. They didn't have Chromebooks or tablets or something to send home to their kids. Or even if they did, some of the kids didn't have access to the internet and the libraries were closed. So what do you do then
Mm-hmm.
when the kids don't have good access and everything has switched to online learning?
Right.
So, and like I said before, we definitely learned that our economy relies on our public schools. They provide jobs, they provide basic services for people in the community, food, for families who are having difficulty. And they, of course, do that every day when school's in session, but they continue to do that in very significant ways when schools were closed, providing tens of thousands of meals to families, not just to the kids who go to those schools, but to people in the surrounding community who were food insecure and needed help with meals.
Right. And like you say, our neighborhoods do rely on them, just even for meals, but also just as meeting places, as a place where the community gathers for other activities besides school and, during after hours. So absolutely. So let's go ahead and come back to just the two of us. We'll take the slides off
Okay.
for a minute. And so you've really identified the challenges very well. The next question is, how are you addressing those challenges? Let's start with how Save Our Schools is trying to address those challenges.
Sure. I think one of the things that's most frustrating to me is that really well-funded out-of-state billionaires are driving a lot of education policy in Arizona. So we know from the thousands of volunteers we have across the state, parents, teachers, and polls, almost every poll you see, almost everybody supports public education and adding more funding to public education. So we know that the people of Arizona want that. But we continue to see laws passed in the legislature that don't meet those needs. And so our goal for Save Our Schools, Arizona, is to make sure that we find ways to prioritize public education and not these voucher schemes that drain money away from our public schools. And so first and foremost, we need to elect people in our legislature who will genuinely support public education for all of our kids and not do the work of these lobbyists who spend a lot of time down at the Capitol lobbying on behalf of people who live out of state.
Mm-hmm.
We want education policy that reflects what the people of Arizona care about, and we care about our public schools and our kids who go to those public schools, and we want them to be well funded.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you were behind an initiative a few years ago, Save
Mhm.
Our Schools. So you managed, one of the solutions was to stop the expansion of vouchers.
Mhm.
Because as you said, initially it was a great program for parents of special needs kids
Mhm.
who needed resources or special resources at home, but it has just grown so exponentially that
Yeah.
unfortunately it's making deep cuts into our public education. So you accomplished your first step to stop expansion in
Mhm.
2018, and now in 2020 you're finding that you need more people in the legislature who will make sure that we're working to support our public schools and our public
Yeah.
funding, rather than continuing to, you know, take money out of the coffers or
Yeah.
not ever get money into the coffers because of enormous tax credits offered to corporations who
Right.
never wind up paying taxes in
Right.
Arizona because of that.
Yeah.
So thank you. So now, if other people are also concerned about this, how can they get involved? What is it that, how can they get or give help?
Okay. Can I show you another screen?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Let's see here. Where did it go? Okay. So I do have a screen. So one of the things that I love doing with Save Our Schools is educating people. Because I think like me, like when I started, I had a sense that things were bad and you know, that our teachers and our schools were struggling, but I had no idea how bad and why
Mhm.
things have gotten so bad. And so one of the things that Save Our Schools Arizona Network does is provides, well, they're, of course, they're all webinars. We used to love to go and present face to face, but they're all webinars now. We have just a general education roadshow that kind of gives a broad overview of how education works in Arizona. What is an STO? What is a voucher? What's the difference between a charter? Our charter schools are public in Arizona, you know, but there's charter schools, there's district schools. It's confusing.
Mhm.
So we have one presentation that goes over that. And then the truth about vouchers is my favorite. It talks about why in the world is this even happening? Who came up with this idea about vouchers? It gets into the history of really the racist and segregationist history. It goes all the way back to Brown versus Board of Education. It's really, really interesting history. And then our advocating for equitable funding looks at funding across different parts of Arizona and how that works. And so we look at some rural schools, schools on reservations, things like that. And then we have another presentation specifically about how private school vouchers hurt our reservation schools.
Mhm.
So we love it for people. We present to huge groups. We present to small groups. We've done just like book clubs or with just a few people. It doesn't, you know, it can be anybody who wants to learn a little bit more can just contact us at sosaznetwork.org. And then we are also are doing a Speaking of Schools series, conversations with national and state education experts. We have one this afternoon, which is, what is today? August 3rd, or sorry, it's June 30th.
Oh, don't scare me.
I know, sorry. June 30th, we're talking to some business leaders from Arizona about education. And then we are talking next week to an education advocate about equitable funding. And so we hope people will check out our website and hop on to those, our live. So, and then you can also find them on our YouTube channel after the fact. But we know that so many people learn and get really passionate and want to be involved. And we love that. So if anybody's interested or just has questions, just shoot me an email, visit our website, and we are always happy to share information.
Oh, wonderful. So I will put the SOS aznetwork.org
Yes,
link in the chat or in the comments below this, and also your email address, if that's all
yes,
right.
that would be great.
People can contact you directly, because this is something that's affecting all of us, whether we have children in classrooms or not.
Yeah.
Because as you pointed out at the beginning, that when we don't have quality public schools, that hurts all of us because we need a strong educated workforce. And if we're not investing at the beginning of people's lives, then we're incarcerating people, more
Yep.
people later on. And so it's smart economically to make sure that every student gets the great education they deserve. And of
Yeah.
course, that's a huge part of why I am now a candidate for the State House, because as a teacher for 27 years and as a mom of two sons who attended public schools, I am just brokenhearted that we have so many students. I think you said 70,000 who go to school every day without knowing who their teacher is going to be in Arizona. And that's just in Arizona. So that's something we really need to change. And I so appreciate your time coming to share your story with us and share a little bit more about Save Our Schools Arizona and the important work that you are doing. And I'm so proud that you're from our own community. You know, it just reminds me that, you know, the difference that each one of us can make when we get involved and say, hey, here's something that needs fixing, and I'm gonna work on this. So thank you, Sharon, and to all your sisters at Save Our Schools, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Please join us again soon when I will be interviewing another guest, or if you have somebody that you think I should talk to, let me know. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay.
Thank you for your dedication to our kids and our schools. It's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.